hello again. This is Dick Foth with stories to make sense of it all. Recording this on June 19th, 2020. It's sort of midway between Memorial Day on the one hand and July the 4th on the other. On June the 10th, 75 years ago, I was a little over 3 years old, and I was standing on the streets of New York City with my parents. The year was 1945. We were on our way as a missionary family to South India as missionary educators. They were the missionary educators. I was the kid just along for the ride. And there was a huge parade in New York City. And the reason for the parade is captured in this clip, newsreel clip from that day with the voice of a famous commentator in that day by the name of Lowell Thomas. Here it is.
This arrival by air begins a record-breaking ovation. New York and General Eisenhower. With New York's Mayor LaGuardia, the commander of victory in Europe, proceeds to the climax of his welcome home. New York is really set for a triumph. That must be the key to Brooklyn. In Central Park, tens of thousands of school children, miles of them along the line of the drive through the park. Down Fifth Avenue through immense cheering crowds. Lady, control your enthusiasm. He personifies victory in the bitter war against the brutal Nazi enemy.
So here I am, standing on the street looking at people's kneecaps. My dad, I'm sure, held me up at some point, and I was able to see what was going on. The Nazi regime had surrendered in May. The Japanese would surrender in August. And this was at the heart of it, and General Dwight David Eisenhower was a symbol of a soldier who had won. I want to talk about soldiering and freedom over these next 3 podcasts, and we're going to try to get these next 3 out in the next 3 weeks. So we'll see how that works. And I want to begin by thinking about soldiers as warriors. Life, and I'm sort of capturing this in this phrase, life may be a journey, but it's also a fight. There are lots of things we fight through and fight for in our lives. And so I just take a snapshot of Scripture and look at soldiers in the Scripture, just 2 or 3, that capture the idea of being a warrior, and being a warrior who is touched by a deeper commitment than just to a nation or even to an ideal. It's very interesting to me in the Gospels that when Jesus' life is coming to an end and he's on the cross, that the text says in Matthew, the 27th chapter, as Jesus died, there was a huge earthquake. And when the centurion, this is Matthew 27, and the centurion and those with him who were guarding Jesus saw the earthquake and all that had happened, they were terrified and exclaimed, "Surely he was the Son of God." Here are Holy Scriptures that put sort of the affirmation or the validation of who Jesus was in the mouth of a soldier. The idea of putting those words in the mouth of a warrior, if you will, someone who was committed to obedience and to devotion, is just fascinating to me. When I think about that again, that idea, I think again of a centurion. Centurion, by the way, in the Roman army, if a legion were 6,000 men, a centurion had responsibilities for 100. A centurion led the charge. They were to the Roman legions, I think in no small part, what a master sergeant is in today's battle plans, people who lead men and women into battle, but they're at the tip of the spear, if you will. There's another passage in the Gospels where Jesus commends the faith of a centurion. He had been talking with some people, and in Luke, the 7th chapter, it says, when Jesus had finished saying all this to the people who were listening, he entered Capernaum, and there a centurion's servant, whom his master valued highly, was sick and about to die. The centurion heard of Jesus, sent some elders of the Jews to him, asked him to come and heal a servant. And when they came to Jesus, they pleaded earnestly with him, this man deserves to have you do this because he loves our nation and has built our synagogue. This is the centurion. So Jesus went with them. He was not far from the house when the centurion sent friends to him. Lord, don't trouble yourself, for I do not deserve to have you come under my roof. That is why I did not even consider myself worthy to come to you, but say the word and my servant will be healed. For I myself am a man under authority, with soldiers under me. I tell this one, go, and he goes, and that one, come, and he comes. And I say to my servant, do this, and he does it. When Jesus heard this, he was amazed at him, and turned to the crowd following him. He said, I tell you, I have not found such great faith even in all of Israel. So here is Jesus commenting on a soldier who has faith, who trusts in him. I want to introduce you to one of those today. It's actually a soldiering family in a lot of ways. My friend's name is Kirk Foster, and he is from Fort Collins, went to Fort Collins High School. He has a wife named Leah and 2 little girls, and they currently live in Texas. But I met Kirk, and also I want to speak to his mother. So I'm going to speak to Kirk and Leah today, and then in the next podcast I'm going to speak to his mom. But let's meet Kirk and get a sense for who he is. I met him when he was 23 years old. That would be 14 years ago now. And he was about to be deployed for the 3rd time as an airborne ranger to Ramadi in Iraq. And out of that came a friendship. So we've been friends for the last 14 years. He's been gone most of that time. But I just really have come to appreciate him a lot. Here's Kirk. You're Army. You're not just any old Army. You are Army Airborne Ranger. Are all Rangers Airborne Rangers?
That's right. All, if you're signed to the 75th Ranger Regiment, which are the actual Ranger units, then you are airborne.
So I'm thinking to myself, I met you a number of years ago when you were 23 years old. How and when did you decide to be a soldier?
I think I kind of always knew. Growing up, I was always outside just playing pretend, soldier, whether it be a knight or, Army military guy, just wearing whatever camouflage, whatever toy guns I could find. So as a kid, I think I was always just kind of playing Army, so I don't think it really shocked anybody. I think my family all knew that was probably a likely choice I was going to make. And then as time kind of moved on, I did fine in school. I enjoyed, sports. I just kind of knew I was always going to join the military.
And you went straight out of high school, 18 years old. So half your life, you've been a soldier. In your head, you were always a soldier, apparently.
Yeah, no, I always wanted to, serve. There's a little bit of that excitement, going out and challenging yourself to see, how you would stand up. And as I was getting close to making my decision, I was kind of looking into all different units. So I knew I wanted to do some type of special operations.
Right.
And then Rangers, what I landed on is through my own research, just knew that was the unit I wanted to try to be a part of.
You don't look mean. I'm just saying. But you're tough.
I hope so. Definitely.
Other people would say you are.
Yeah. No, it's, I kind of get that a lot. They think, but just being able to know when that side, that toughness needs to come through. Like right now with my daughters, similar to like turning a switch.
Yeah. So we're sitting here with your little ones. One is a year and a half.
No, this is 8 months old.
8 months. 8 months and 3.5. So we're sitting here with your wife and with your mom. I'm going to talk to them now. So you just stand guard over there, and we'll just talk. And those of you listening, if you hear little people in the background, the reason is that there are little people in the background. Now let me go to that other warrior in the family, his wife Leah, mother of two, at home, praying, working, caring for the kids while he's overseas, deployed. And here's my conversation with Leah. So what he's off doing what he's doing for the nation, for us, you're at home doing what?
Everything. You have to take on all the roles, especially now with kids, making sure that they don't feel a huge disruption in their lives, especially. And then, I have to become the repairman and, managing everything, making sure everything stays together as best as I can. And so that all he has to focus on is what he's doing over there.
Right. So you're fighting to keep things normal.
Yeah, as much as possible.
So when he comes home, let's say he's the leader, right? Whatever. Mm-hmm. He comes home. You've been the leader.
Yeah.
And then he comes home. How does that go?
I mean, it's been a process, I think, of finding our groove with that and making sure that, especially maybe after the first couple of times, that I knew how, when and where to step back.
Sure.
And that he knew when and where to step back.
Yeah.
Giving ourselves that grace period to find our new groove and let Hannah was the one that has been through separations the most, and just her kind of figuring out who he is in her day-to-day.
Yeah.
And letting them kind of work that out together.
Yeah. And you represent in a lot of ways, thousands of military wives in any of the services.
Sure.
And the burden of fighting for normalcy, I suppose even establishing and reestablishing who I am, mm-hmm. because it's this ever-changing scenario. It isn't just that you're at home, but you can also change locations, right?
Yeah, it's definitely a reinvention process that happens pretty frequently, and we do have to kind of stop every so often and check back in with each other and figure out where we stand with different things and how we feel about different things, so that we don't let this process separate us too much in a more of a relational sense than a physical sense.
Yeah.
And definitely, going from girlfriend to fiance to wife to mom over the course of all these deployments, I do change a lot.
Sure.
And him allowing me to do that and vice versa.
So I had this interview with Kirk last fall in September of 2019. Let me insert this. What I haven't told you about him is this, that he's a master sergeant in the Army, but as of this day of the recording, today he graduated from the Sergeant Major Academy and is on assignment to the 101st Airborne Division. Sergeant Major in the U.S. military is the highest level of non-commissioned officers, enlisted, but a leader of men and women and significant responsibilities. So that's a great benchmark, if you will, a rite of passage for Kirk. But beyond that, let me just tell you about his awards. He won't talk to you about this, but I would talk to you about this. You get a Purple Heart if you're wounded in battle. Kirk has 3. You get a Army Commendation Medal if you do some significant things. And he has 2 of those, both with the additional V for Valor, and 3 Meritorious Service Medals. It's really a significant thing if someone in the military, in the Army, gets a Bronze Star for valor in battle. Kirk has 5. And beyond that, he has 2 Silver Stars both of which were awarded in the same month some years back. So you have the Congressional Medal of Honor, which is the highest award. You have the Distinguished Service Cross, which is the next, and then Silver Stars, Bronze Stars, etc. So I'm talking to a young man at age 37 who has served not only his nation, but his Lord well, in terms of his faith. And how do you handle all that? How do you handle the kinds of things you see in war and are part of? You're decorated. You have 3 Purple Hearts?
Yeah, 3 Purple Hearts.
For wounds? Mm-hmm. I'm not going to ask you to show me where those are, okay? Just between us, we're good. But you have a number of Bronze Stars, you got a couple of Silver Stars. I mean, when you're in the fight, you're not thinking, man, I hope I get a Bronze Star for this. That's just stuff that other people recognize, correct?
Mm-hmm. And I would say that mentality can be very dangerous.
I would think.
And that's why I always tell a lot of people when they do see my amount of awards, I always like, oh man, I want to try to do that. And I tell them like, no, you don't.
You can't.
All these came with a price, and I'd give them all back. If, my buddies were still there. So
the things that you have seen in your youth, you're still young. You're just a kid to me, right? I'm more than twice as old as you are. You've seen more of life and death than 99.9% of the world would see. And you've had responsibility, as you've already mentioned, for having to take life in order to save life. Do it. Mm-hmm. Does that sound? Am I saying that right?
Yep. No, I think that's a good way to kind of say it.
So, how do you process that? Because just the heat. I know, there are people who are totally broken down by way less than that. How have you processed that over time? How do you deal with it?
Yeah, I think it's definitely hard. Right after it happened, a lot of it was, certain times it's always easiest just to try to, forget about it or, block it out. But as time's gone on, I think about it more, and then comes down to, faith. Like I said at the beginning, is this is what I knew I wanted to do, since I was a little kid. So I would say God called me to do. So I think my actions in those circumstances, as bad as they were, they could have been worse.
Yeah. Had
maybe someone that didn't have that faith and panicked.
Sure.
Or so I just I did my best in each of those circumstances, and for whatever reason
you survived.
Lived, and a couple of my friends didn't. But at the same time, I took those lessons and tried to the next mission. Make sure we learned from it.
So you said this was like a calling, like King David was a warrior, that sort of thing, or Paul chained between 2 Roman guards, and when he describes faith, he says the helmet of this, the breastplate of that, and the feet shod of the. In that warrior life or mentality, in any culture, we need people like you to do things that we either can't or don't want to or too scared to. Is that fair to say like that?
Yeah, I definitely think that's true.
So when these things happen, how do you deal? I want to come back to that, because some of your PTSD is real, right? Mm-hmm. Whether it's in war. My wife Ruth collapsed with sudden cardiac death 6 years ago. I had PTSD afterward. This stress. And how have you, as far as you can tell, how have you avoided that? Because some people go to counseling.
Yeah,
and so on.
I think for one is all those circumstances. Like, I believed in what we were doing, and I believed in my actions. So I think, the enemy, I was able to eliminate the enemy. knowing that those were the bad guys. I mean, it was kill or be killed. So that kind of plays into it. Like I go to bed every night knowing that, I did the right thing.
An honorable thing.
So that helps. And then I'd say just talking about it with, the guys that experienced it with you. And that was kind of something I didn't do a good enough job, I think, initially. But as
so you've learned that.
I've experienced that and, I try to make sure I explain that to some of the younger guys that go through similar events. Do just kind of talk about it. You don't necessarily need to go see, a psychologist, unless that's what you need, but just talking about it with your buddies or someone's close to you, someone that went through that similar, if not same event, definitely helped.
But you do more than that. You go out on the water, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us that?
Yeah, and then having that, one of my favorite hobbies is scuba diving. So it's been a little bit difficult now that I got two young daughters, but my wife and I both, I even told this as we were kind of dating, was that she better get scuba certified, because one of my ways of relaxing is after each deployment going someplace tropical and spending some time scuba diving.
Just going down and leaving it on the bottom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
I think that's a powerful metaphor. I went to your wedding, and I go over to sign the wedding register, and there are pictures, I think two or three fellows in Ranger uniform. They were your friends. Mm-hmm. Tell me about that, and why were they there? Why were the pictures there? Do you mind telling me that?
Yeah, no, they were three buddies of mine, Dylan, Ryan, and Ricky. So just three guys that two were actually all three of them were in my squad at one point. Two of one were killed, right next to me. Just kind of, we were on separate missions. One was in 2005 and the other was in 2009. But again, they were right there and in a firefight, and they were killed. And then my buddy Ricky I switched to a different company. He stayed in one, and then he was killed on a deployment. So yeah, they're just three guys that I knew that had they still been around, they would have been there at my wedding. And also three guys that they sacrificed their lives so that I had that opportunity to be married to my beautiful wife and have the two daughters that I have now. So
wow. And you're in the process of becoming a sergeant major, which is would be the highest non-commissioned rank or officer in the Corps. You could have been an officer, like you could have gone to OCS. Why didn't you do it? Isn't the pay better if you're like a major or something?
Oh yeah,
not just a sergeant major.
Yeah, pay is definitely better as an officer, but I'd say you just you don't get that same day-to-day interaction with all the guys, from being that rifleman and working your way all the way up. And I just want to be more the guy on the front lines. That's what I'll strive to do. I never went in thinking I'm going to be a leader necessarily. I just wanted to be the best soldier I could be, and then continue to move up, but still liked being right there at the point of friction. So I always kind of stayed as the NCO.
Your father's a builder, construction, big guy, great athlete along the way, I understood. But when I talk to you, it feels like that. You're like the hands-on. You like to design strategies and tactics. And would that be correct?
Yeah, I'd say, yeah. No, I think the biggest thing when I think of my dad is his work ethic and kind of attention to detail. That's really what I took from him. Is he's one of the hardest workers that I know. And
yeah, me too. Yeah, I see that.
His attention to detail and his preparation. A lot of that, I think I take from him, or he's probably the first person I know that's up in the morning preparing. So
3:30. Right?
yeah. So
I never have to worry about calling him too early.
yeah, no, that's very true.
So in your 18 years in the military, give me a couple of 3 things, and again, this is spontaneous, just give it a go, that you have learned about life, and what counts.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'd say it's, something to treasure. It's worth fighting for. And I think, in my experience, being so close to those kind of close calls,
Mm-hmm.
I've appreciated life, I think, more than most people. I mean, I think a lot of people still do, but I don't think you really can appreciate it the same way. So every second I get with my 2 daughters, I'm extremely thankful, even if it's the current one that's awake at 4:30 in the morning.
Well, she could get up with your dad.
Yeah.
Give her to your dad.
No, he's already gone.
Oh.
No, but yeah, so I'm just extremely thankful for, all the blessings I've had and just the time I get with my family. And I think the two kind of complement each other. I want to be the best dad and husband, so I strive for that. But at the same time, that makes me, a better Army leader, because when it comes time to training, doing a job in the Army, it's, you want to get down to business and do it right, so you can make it back to your family and do it, because you're missing that time. You want to make sure your time, is spent being productive.
Yeah. One last question. So you're part of that warrior breed, if I can use that phrase, but you're also one of the, you follow the commander-in-chief. You took that oath, right? Mm-hmm. That you raised your right hand when you were an 18-year-old and said, I promise, I pledge to defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, domestic and foreign, and to obey the orders of my superiors, from my immediate superior all the way to the commander-in-chief. But you have another commander-in-chief that is beyond that one. You're one of those Jesus follower guys, mm-hmm. for Pete's sake. Yeah. How has your faith and your trust in God played into your life as you're with the guys in the middle of battle, or just hanging out, whatever? How does it play in?
Yeah, I'd say it. For me, it helps me just like Psalm 140. I think it's 140. Where just you covered my head on the day of battle. So I just kind of, I know that things are, could always go poorly, but I know God's looking after me. And then just that faith in Him and Jesus, it kind of, I think, gives me a little bit of a calm in those chaotic situations, because, I know, worst case, happens. Yeah. I'm spending an eternity in paradise, so I'm fine, and that just kind of allows me to kind of my mind, I don't think, is as cluttered as maybe I've seen other guys when that time hits.
Sure.
So
before you're called to be a warrior, you're called to follow Him.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good combination.
And then Chaplain Struker, which is obviously, very famous Army chaplain, we did a prayer breakfast when he came down and spoke at 3rd Rain Battalion when I was there. And he I'm trying to say how he worded it, but he said, following Jesus Christ allows you to become the most dangerous warrior on the battlefield. And that's kind of something that really stuck with me, and it's definitely helped me.
That's fantastic. Well, Joe, thank you for this talk. More than that, thank you for wearing the cloth of the nation, for helping defend the nation, but also protect our freedoms, so we can talk about Jesus and have a podcast and put it on the air without fear of reprisal.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful. And I've been honored to know you these past 18 years, and I look forward to the years ahead.
No, thank you very much. I'm happy to do it. I appreciate your friendship with the family, especially to my dad, and there at my wedding, and then I'll never forget coming up and speaking with you there right before I went to Ramadi for that deployment. So always appreciated your kind words and your friendship.
God bless you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Life is not just a journey. It's a fight. And we fight through things, and we fight for things. We fight, as Kirk does, for an idea. If you're listening to this and you're military or former military, you would recognize this language. It's enlistment day. A cluster of young people stand at semblance of attention, and when told, they raise their right hands and repeat after the officer, "I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same. I will obey the orders of the President of the United States and the orders of the officers appointed over me, according to regulations in the Uniform Code of Military Justice, so help me God." This is a pledge. This is an oath, a covenant, not just a contract. It's a covenant. It's a promise. And it's to an idea to defend the Constitution of the United States. So it carries freight and weight, and I have to admit, not having served myself except one semester of Air Force ROTC in college, that I am both touched and somewhat overwhelmed at the dedication and the men and women who help to provide for the common defense, if I can phrase it that way. So coming back to centurions, people who lead, you get to Acts 10, and a centurion, a Roman, is used by God to share the gospel with a whole other part of the world besides the Jewish people. And then Paul, he gets in all kinds of trouble when you read the book of Acts, and he's being transported to Rome, and the ship wrecks, and the soldiers want to kill the prisoners they're transporting because if they could pay with their lives if the prisoners escaped. And it's a centurion in Acts 27 that commands them not to do that, and he saves Paul's life. Thank you to those who wear the cloth of the nation for what you are doing, what you have done to keep the fight for freedom alive. Thank you for your faithfulness and your devotion. And I just, for one, express my undying gratitude for what you have done. So it's because of you that we get to have a podcast like this, Freedom of Speech, or that we get to go to houses of worship, even if we do it long distance by video. Because of you and your commitment, that happens. And I, for one, am grateful. God bless you. Thanks for your time. We'll see you in a few days.